There is a lot of misconception with prefab and manufactured home, tiny homes even. People get very confused. Manufactured homes are basically one trailer that has a home on it. So typically they're not wider than 12 feet. You need two of them to stitch together if you want to make anything bigger. These manufactured homes are typically 2x4 construction. They don't have great insulation. They're meant to be placed in a trailer park, which has, access to services. So it's not on a permanent foundation. Whereas with what we're doing with modular is essentially we're breaking down the home into components. And that's what the modules are. They're basically components, rooms that are coming together to be able to create this larger home. Modular construction is very similar to regular stick frame construction on site. We're using the same materials. We're using the same sort of process, same labor. It's just being built in a factory in a controlled setting.
Dry.
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 And we can build all year round without the weather affecting us,
Welcome to Canada Now. I'm Ashley Smith, and every week we dig into the bold ideas, real stories, and fresh perspectives shaping Canada's future. Let's get into it. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Canada Now. I'm your host, Ashley Smith. This is where we unpack bold ideas and meet the builders, dreamers, and doers shaping what's next in our country. Today, I'm excited to host two innovators who are reshaping how we build and live in homes. Please welcome Rohan Kulkarni, co-founder and CEO of Rohe Homes, an architect turned entrepreneur whose visit to his father's village in India sparked a vision for faster, smarter, more affordable homes. And Salik Khan, co-founder and chief experience officer of Rohe Homes, whose operational and strategic leadership has helped bring that vision into reality from factory-built envelopes to fully configured on-site homes. Rohe Homes, based in British Columbia, leverages modular construction, unfolding envelope systems, and a design ethos inspired by the less is more philosophy. They're tackling one of Canada's biggest issues, housing supply and affordability, by rethinking how homes are built, shipped, and finished. In our conversation, we'll explore the story behind their startup journey, how their innovative approach works in real life, the markets they're targeting, and the broader implications for housing in Canada. Welcome, Rohan and Salik. Thank you so much for being here at Canada Now.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I really do appreciate this. It's been fun because I've sort of known you guys a bit from afar for more than several years, actually.
Yeah.
I think we met like in, maybe it was the depths of COVID, like 2021 maybe, as I was doing some virtual tours in new builds that were happening around Vancouver that people couldn't get in, and you invited me to come see some of the work that you're doing.
Yeah.
And it's really exciting to see sort of how far you've come, because at that time, I think it was still earlier stages, and you've been able to make some big leaps. So before we dive into where you are now, I'd love to know a little bit more about sort of your why and what brought you to where you are now. Why don't we start with you, Rohan? Why don't you tell us how you came to this stage? Yeah.
Absolutely. So I moved out to BC back in 2017. I was fresh to BC and I took a little trip to India. I was in India. I was visiting my father's village, and I was just spending probably 2-3 days there when I observed for the first time, and it really hit home, families that were living under the poverty line. They didn't have quality housing, and I could really see, how that affected them. And personally, that affected me, seeing these kids who didn't have running water, running electricity, proper toilets, basic things that we take for granted. I've lived in North America most of my life, and I've never had to face those conditions. So that sort of crystallized in me this sort of truth that housing, and especially quality housing, should be a fundamental human right. You're born on this earth. You should have access to be able to live in quality housing, especially, children who are coming into this world. And so that's where sort of this journey started. I saw these sad conditions and it lit a fire in me. And that's where, this whole idea of Rohe Homes and creating quality housing that's accessible to all started from.
And how did the two of you connect? Where do you, for the listeners, I was joking because I thought they were brothers this whole time. But, so they can tell me the real story now.
Yeah. We have different last names, so that helps.
I know. Oh my goodness.
So we met playing ultimate frisbee, like a meetup. And Rohan was fresh to Vancouver. I had been here a few years at the time. And I think you said you were fresh from New York. So I was like, oh, let me introduce him to my friends. And we got along really well. So it just connected. At the time, I was working in an industry adjacent to sort of rural housing. I was focused on rural communities and GIS infrastructure. So I was doing that. Soon into our friendship, that's when Rohan introduced the idea. And he already had this existing ideology of how do we create housing for these communities. And I'm like, wait, I work in these communities. Yeah, we came together and started to build the business together.
And what year was that when you got started?
Oh, that was 2018 is when I joined, and you started it in...
I started 2017, about just a year before, and I was just working on more the architecture and design at that point from the ideation. But when Salik came in, he brought in more of the business aspect of it, and he knew the communities personally. And what he told me when we first met was like, wow, these communities that I'm working with, their biggest need is quality housing. When we looked at it together, they had the same problems that we were seeing in other countries and other areas. These rural communities didn't have access to labor, didn't have access to materials, and it became even difficult for people to send trades out to these rural communities to build because they had no place to live. When he told me that, I was like, wow, let's figure out how we can help solve the problem here in Canada, and then we can, look to take this around the world.
For those who are listening, so for those who are watching, and by the way, if you're listening, do check out our YouTube channel because I am going to show some video and visualizations of some of the work that you're doing because I really think that visual helps someone who's new to learning about prefab and factory built really see what can be done. But can you tell me before we really jump in, if you were describing Rohe Homes to somebody who is maybe less informed when it comes to real estate and construction, like what it is that you do?
I think what we're trying to do is simplify the construction process by integrating modular construction, meaning something that's built off-site to be transported and streamline the entire process. So from a side of having a set scope of work for the general contractors, for the designers, for ourselves as a manufacturer, we're streamlining what construction has had many challenges with over the years. It's usually due to unpredictable timelines. It could be weather conditions that affect it. It could be the lack of available trades, as Rohan mentioned. So what we're trying to do is look to standardize the process by integrating modular within that process. So by allowing factory-built homes to be part of the process, we're streamlining and speeding up the construction of homes.
And we know that in lots of places across Canada, but in the Lower Mainland in particular, that timeline is pretty lengthy and very expensive. So when you're looking at developing homes from the start, it's expensive from the start.
Yeah. And the other thing too is that people always are starting from scratch almost, right? They're seeing a builder, they're like, oh, I'm interested in this idea, but they don't always know where to start. So for us, what we're trying to do is implement a system where we have a set of designs, we have a set of teams that are ready to execute on a project, and it becomes now like a one-stop shop and a refined process for the individuals that are interested instead of trying to figure it out on their own.
So what exactly is it that you're building?
We're building different typologies. We've done everything from laneway homes to multiplexes. And so that's sort of our sweet spot right now. We're focusing on this initiative of small scale multi-unit housing. And that has been a push that we've seen from a lot of people in the community. The large developers, they're building the luxury homes, they're building the condos. But there's this huge segment called the missing middle. They are regular homeowners like you and me who are sitting on this huge, valuable piece of land, and they don't know what to do with it. Their families are growing. Their kids are getting pushed out of the communities, having to move to, different cities to be able to start their own families. And what we're seeing is that homeowners don't have the tools to be able to go through this development process. And that's where we're sort of coming in, and that's where we're focusing on helping regular, everyday people build a fourplex or a laneway without having to go through this huge, rigorous construction process.
So just to clarify, I do see there's different scenarios and different types of customers for what you're doing. But this concept of folks who maybe have owned a home for 20 years or whatever, and they're thinking about what's next, and as their families, evolving. I can say I'm living this right now. Like, I want to live with my parents. I want, who knew I would say that? But with a young kid and, we have some special needs, it's just be nice to be close. And actually with my spouse's parents, we've talked about developing on their property because they have an older home, and we've explored some of the building options, and it is a tough thing, even for someone like myself and my partners who him and his family, it comes from a real estate background. It's still super overwhelming where to start and what to do, and what's like the first step and the cost. And so maybe we can dive a little bit into that piece. Is that how is it that this helps in regards to cost savings or cost transparency? Because I do think that that's a big part of the upside of what you're doing with Rohe Homes.
Yeah. So I think when it comes to costs, there's a lot of hidden and unknown costs in construction that we can't always measure. Things like when you're developing on a site and maybe there's a weather delay and it causes multiple days of you waiting for someone to come on site. There's costs associated with that. You're paying for the fencing, you're paying for the storage. So you have all these hidden costs that are happening throughout, especially when there's not a preset or predefined process that exists. So that's where we see that if you standardize or if you implement from the beginning, starting from design, even before that, starting at feasibility, where you're saying, is this site available to develop on? What can I do with this site? That's a cost incurred in itself, because you're either finding out from a third party what's buildable, who the builders are, who the architects are. That's time, money, and investment. So what we're saying is, here's a way where if you pre-design sites and homes that are ready to be used, now you can implement the rest of the scope of work to streamline again from the beginning. So we see this as a cost savings of up to 30% right now with traditional construction. So an added advantage of modular overall is going to be that you have cost certainty, you have cost transparency, and you're saving on these unknown or hidden costs.
Can you tell me a little bit? I know that you just had a build that was featured in Squamish. So maybe you can help the audience understand a little bit about like the real life application, the real life experience of your customers. And also just, I think what we haven't gotten into is that really how quickly this can unfold once it's ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We just finished up a project out in Squamish, and similar to what you were mentioning before, the use case was a older couple. They had a single family home that they had owned for the last, I believe, 10 years, 12 years. And they were in this retirement phase, and they were looking to downsize. Their daughter also was living in Squamish, but she was living across town in a townhouse. And so she wanted to move closer to them. Her mother was having some health issues, so they wanted to be close together so they could take care of each other. And so what they did was they built a laneway home in their backyard, a 700 square foot laneway that was in their backyard. The parents moved into the backyard, so they got a fancy new home. They downsized like they wanted to. They're living in the backyard, and the daughter was able to move into the primary house with with her family and her pets and everything like that. So they were both happy, and now they're living in this beautiful, intergenerational lifestyle. Yeah. And that's what they envisioned for themselves, and that's what's now reality for them.
Folks from the Lower Mainland know where Squamish is. People from across the country may be slightly less aware of, the geographical location, but you're basically going up the Sea to Sky Highway from Vancouver. Not an easy route, just first of all, to even get there. So like supplies coming over. Tell me what that looks like in a case like this with hiring Rohe.
So with the client, they had an idea, an inspiration of what they wanted to do, but they didn't know exactly what the building would look like, what the size would be. So what we came up with was, let's figure out a way where the customer needs would be met. The client said to us, I want to have a space for, my workshop. The elderly father wanted something for himself. The mother wanted something comfortable for herself, something modern. And the daughter, of course, wanted a little bit of separation so they can have that communal space to share between each other. So what we designed was, again, a 700 square foot laneway. With our technology, what we're able to do is take that 700 square feet, collapse a portion of it so that it fits on a truck bed and is able to be transported directly to the site. And this can take standard routes. It can go throughout any road in BC. It can also go on the ferries. So taking it up to the sea to sky, we didn't have any restrictions or timelines that we had to adhere to. And it went very smoothly.
What's the size? Like, let me visualize this. What does it look like on the back of a truck coming up?
When it's folded up, it goes from the 500 square feet to about 200 square feet. So it's about 10 and a half feet wide, 20 feet deep, and 10 and a half feet tall.
So you're literally able to get it out there. And then what does the, I'm probably not using the right language. Once it gets on site,
the assembly?
Thank you. What does the assembly look like in terms of time once it's there?
The timeline is about 4 hours to unfold one of our units. So we drop this unit from the truck bed to the foundation, and in about 4 hours, our team has installed it, unfolded the unit, and installed it to the foundation. And so it's a pretty quick process. I think the Squamish project, because it was a 500 plus a 200, took us just 6 hours for the whole thing to install.
It's crazy.
And so, it was a rapid process. There was no, complaints from the neighbors. They were happy because there's not, 6 months of construction going on. And the homeowners were happy because there was not a huge mess that's left on their site, and they are still able to use their backyard and live a normal life while this whole transition is happening.
Right. It's far less disruptive. I actually hadn't thought about that component, especially if you're living on site and putting in an infill property. That's incredible.
Exactly.
My family, my spouse and I did a renovation in our 2-bedroom condo, and it took 6 months. And we, had to have a porta potty outside because we were on the ground floor. And so all these requirements to just get a renovation done, and and they did a wonderful job. So I'm not.
Hope it was in the summer months, not in the winter months.
A little bit of, life gets into the play here, right? So, but I just think about the streamlined experience for that homeowner with this type of a project, which is significant. It's a game changer for their family. That's a big deal. So I think that's really neat. There's so many directions I want to go in this conversation, but I will say we just saw one another at a conference, at the Pacific West conference here in Vancouver. And I got to see some of your marketing materials and your display. And I got to see really how far you guys have come in terms of design options and the types of products that you can put together. So I would love to, we don't have to go too in the weeds, but maybe let's lay out the vision for where Rohe Homes is going in terms of the types of things you can present to homeowners today.
So just going back before, the launch of what we're doing now, we started by just designing to consumers' needs. But what was happening is that every single time there would be an iteration on the design, and there would be a transformation of it. So if you're thinking about modular construction and standardization, it kind of goes against that. What you need to do is sort of consider all the needs and be able to produce something that helps solve a lot of those challenges, or maybe has slight tweaks that can help it. So what we did was we partnered with architects locally. There's 3 renowned firms that we've partnered with. And what they've done is they've taken our building envelope and the building details and transform a modular set of them, so multiple units configured together to create multiplex designs. So we're taking an existing, let's say, 33 by 122 lot and be able to maximize the buildable area, but have a beautiful design that's associated with that area and with the modular system. So it's almost a nice harmony between design, manufacturing, and then providing a solution for the homeowners at the end.
And can you give me a bit of an outline, the range of home types we're talking about here? Because I saw, you've got the infill laneway style home. You've got maybe the more traditional, what someone might think of like a single family type of thing. And then you've got a multiplex design that I believe we were looking at there.
Yeah. So I think with our company, as we've been growing, it's been a natural occurrence to figure out ways in which we take this foldable building system and manipulate it in such a way where it can apply to all those different use cases or home types. So we can go from, a small little carriage home all the way up to a 4,000 square foot multiplex. So the range is almost endless in terms of where we're providing the units. And as we evolve, as we research and develop, we also want to look at 4 to 6 story units in the future.
Wow, that's awesome. And are these, this is not like an infomercial for Rohe Homes, but I want people, because there's such a visual component to what you're doing, I want to guide folks to be able to learn more. So are these designs that I saw yesterday, for example, available to see on your website?
Yeah, there will be as of tomorrow.
Okay, so by the time people are listening or watching, I will have links in the show notes. So I just wanted to say that before I forgot. So if people are just like, what are these guys talking about? I want to better understand. But I do think that it's actually this idea of prefab and modular. I think it's becoming something more in sort of culture that we're talking about. I know, having been involved in the real estate sector, this is an area that we're looking at, even just from a data point, because modular homes has meant something different, and manufactured homes as an example. So even in the professional real estate community, there's a certain preconception about when we're using this language, what type of home we're thinking about. That traditionally, you go to the lot, you look at a prefab home that's pre-built, and then you slab it onto a property or whatever. So can you help me maybe break down some of the misconceptions and really look at what it is that you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, there is a lot of misconception with, prefab and manufactured home, tiny homes even. People get very confused. I think what people don't, manufactured homes are basically one trailer that has a home on it. So typically they're not wider than 12 feet. You need 2 of them to stitch together if you want to make anything bigger. And so these manufactured homes are typically 2x4 construction. They don't have great insulation. They're meant to be placed in a trailer park, which has, access to services and things like that. So it's not on a permanent foundation, and it's not attached to the property. So it's not an asset that's included with the property. Whereas with modular, what we're doing with modular is essentially we're breaking down the home into components. And that's what the modules are. They're basically components, rooms that are coming together to be able to create this larger home. And so that's where I think the misconception is. And that's where, modular construction is very similar to, regular stick frame construction on site. We're using the same materials. We're using the same sort of process, the same labor. It's just being built in a factory in a controlled setting, and we can build dry. And we can build all year round without the weather affecting us, and that's the biggest thing, here in Vancouver, it rains probably 40% of the year. So, what do you do? These guys, and it's a huge thing for the framers and the guys working on the site. It's pretty deflating. Come home every day soaked and have to get ready for another day of work or things like that. So
that's people might be wondering about that, and I know we sort of touched on it indirectly, but so you still have labor. They're just inside. They're working. They're helping. You're hiring people that are putting this together.
They're just happier.
And one thing about labor, which is really interesting, you're seeing a huge decline in the labor force, right? So there has to be novel technologies or solutions that are going to help address the labor challenges that are occurring. So what we looked at was, how do we, first of all, build a home do it in such a way where we standardize the process, but allow the labor to do less specialized work and more general work that maybe has less impact on their body, right? So by using technology, by leveraging, some of the things that modular allows for, we're helping enable a workforce that actually can grow now instead of decline.
We spoke with a local university, BCIT, and that's what they're also seeing with their sort of young students. A lot of there's a statistic right now in Canada, I think 80% of the workforce, the construction workforce is going to retire by 2035. And that's due to a lot of, the construction workers right now being from the 60s boomers, that sort of millennials, that sort of generation. And so what we're seeing
old,
now,
I know.
We're getting old, unfortunately. But what we're seeing a transition in the young folks is that they want these technical positions. So they don't want to be just framers or just electricians. They want to be able to understand, multiple sort of aspects of construction. And so that's what BCIT is also, and these universities are pushing towards, these trade schools, that, we can have people who are a little bit more malleable for different things. And, that will, in sort of the overall picture of the Canadian economy, help help elevate us so that, we're not having to pay people minimum wage to work these, crucial jobs.
Yeah. Do you see there's, whether or not there's an impact on just quality control in general in this environment?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I think it comes back to the fact that when you think about normal construction as it occurs even currently, you don't have a way necessarily to, first of all, measure the overall impacts of, let's say, labor disruption, access to site, environmental challenges. So with modular, you're able to actually now do a bit of reporting. You can also start to measure timelines. You can look at labor performance. You can have accountability as well, by getting sign-offs on certain sections of the home. So with our product, for example, we have to have CSA certification. So it's a Canadian standard that we have to reach, as well as the local building codes, the energy step codes. So the same rules apply, again, for modular as it does for traditional, but we have to go up and above that just to have our compliance in order.
Yeah, it's interesting. I do think kind of back to the misconceptions, and I feel like there's no right way to say this, but when we've talked about prefab, I guess in the past, there's sort of been a stigma around it. Yeah. And even saying that feels a little bit political, because it's like it was sort of associated with low income.
Yeah.
And I mean, clearly what you're wanting to do is bring something to the table that offers more affordability and housing solutions, but it's also something that can be like a nice, high quality home that a person who might otherwise go and hire a builder to do. This is an alternative. And I think that there's just a shift in maybe awareness around this offering. Can you speak to that a little bit?
That's why we partnered with these amazing architects, right? You saw some of the designs, and these architects have created phenomenal designs, things that most people wouldn't be able to actually afford to live in. But because of our standardized sort of building system and the way that the standardization, the nature of standardization works, these architects have been able to create this design, and now they've made it open to anyone. And so that changes a lot, I think, in terms of the perception of these sort of modular homes or these standard sort of homes. They're not spec homes. They're very well defined, homes for different use cases.
And one thing I'll add to that is like, we want to control one aspect of the process where we're actually just creating a housing system, something that is enclosed, something that protects you against the environment. But what goes inside the home, right? The finishes, the level of finish, that is still manipulable. And that allows, so our partnership model is, of course, with the architects designing beautiful spaces, but also we partner with different general contractors. We offer, a more standard level solution, or we can go and get a more premium level solution. So we're still democratizing what we feel is the modular aspect of construction, and not just holding it back by saying, here's one spec home and this is all it's going to be. We're trying to create a model where it's a partnership alignment that still allows for people, if they want to go big, they can go big. If they want to go small, they can go small. Or if they want to go luxe, they can. Or if they want to go more standard, they can.
That's really, really interesting. I do hope people take a look so they can visualize this a little bit more. That was going to be my question, actually, about customization and just the interior, generally, interior design of home building.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, as you're scaling, actually, why don't we talk about that first? Can we talk a little bit about the business model and how you've managed to come, like when we first met, you really had the shell of the home. And I think you've come quite a long way.
Yeah.
How are you efficiently and strategically scaling your business so that way you can adapt to clients' needs and grow in a way where like you can be here in 5 years and be doing more and be creating a model that other people can be really excited about?
I think it comes down to learned experience. Me and Rohan have been through the ringer. We decided at the beginning to do the entire process through and through. So everything from acquiring a homeowner who's interested in building with us to design, manufacture, install, finish, get occupancy. We had to go through all the cycles to understand how our business could work. What we didn't realize, it takes a lot of capacity, and we were burnt out.
Yeah.
We really were. And one thing that we saw was that if we wanted to scale, we had to let go of control of certain aspects of things, but be able to help assist in those things and be able to help monitor and help facilitate. So what we focused on was, okay, so we have designs, we have people on our team that can design, but could their time be better utilized for things that can help impact the overall project? We also have labor force, but do we want to take our guys from the facility and take them to these locations all throughout the city? Or do we want to hire someone locally that can help improve the process? So that's where we thought, why don't we piecemeal what we do and start to work with certified partners throughout? And now you're allowing for flexibility, you're allowing for accountability. And for us, we can do what we do best instead of having to jumble around and rush like we did in the past.
At the end of the day, we wanted to provide the customer with a turnkey solution. And that's what the customer is always looking for. They don't know where to start and they don't know the process. And they want someone to help them guide them through it. So that's where we wanted to make sure we were helping them with that. And then, of course, we're providing the building envelope. And that's been taken on by the GC who does the foundation and the finishing. So it works very well for us.
I feel very proud of myself because at a moment there I'm like, GC, general contractor. I'm still having to remind myself as we're doing this show, like to break down some of the language sometimes because when people are listening, but
we're acronym people nowadays.
I know, man. I get
acronyms
it.
all the day.
Speaking of acronyms, AI. I don't want to miss that because I also think it comes to your point you just made, Rohan, about making decisions and how to decide what is the best direction for you as a potential home builder, hiring Ro to build their own home. So how are you implementing AI into your systems to help the customer?
So we created this AI tool. One of the main questions we were getting from customers was, hey, what can I build? Everyone wants to know what they can build. And part of it is, people are exploring, trying to figure out what are the possibilities, what is out there. And so what we thought was, hey, why don't we create a nice little tool, a chatbot that you could type in your address and it tells you exactly what you could build. Can you build a fourplex? Can you build a threeplex, duplex? Can you build a laneway in the backyard? And so this chatbot is able to help customers get you that basic information. Then it's able to give you a little bit more information in terms of the cost, the timelines, and then it is allowing you to book a meeting with one of our representatives.
Okay. So, and just to make sure, just to clarify, when you say someone can plunk in their address and determine what they can do, this is considering like zoning, maybe the size of the lot, for example, like the things that maybe a homeowner might not really understand what the implications are, right? Is that maybe you can outline that a little more?
It's a starting point. That's the idea. It's something to give them the feasibility of what they can do on their lot. It takes into consideration the lot size. It takes into consideration the zoning. And a lot of the times there's not really many resources for people to turn to get the process started. So what we're trying to enable is that exact thing, which is, where do we begin? How do I figure out what I can build? And thereafter, the AI tool is not something where we're saying, hey, you're going to find out all the information. It is a tool to get you started. And then you speak with us and we dive deeper.
Do you have a general I think we've talked a lot, for example, about the Lower Mainland, and you gave the example of the laneway home in Squamish. But when I'm thinking about urban versus rural, and even when I think about your story where you were really inspired by housing needs in India, like I'm thinking about where you see Rohe kind of going in terms of what kind of solutions it can bring in different types of geographical environments, I guess.
We want to take this everywhere. We've been able to deliver products all throughout BC. Actually, the Lower Mainland is the last market that we're touching. We started out in Sechelt. We did a couple projects in Terrace, Lac-La-Hache, Vernon, the island. So we've been everywhere other than the Lower Mainland. And we really see that this is a real benefit for these communities, because part of their challenges, like we were mentioning before, labor, materials, access to other sort of specialized equipment and machinery. And so for them, having a prefabricated solution show up, being half complete, and then using local trades and being able to lower the capacity of those local trades so they can work on more projects is what we're trying to push for. And that's where we think that we can step in and really help these communities accelerate their housing production over the next couple of years. And that's sort of what's needed all across Canada. And we're hoping that we can have micro manufacturing plants all across that are able to service different provinces and different sort of areas within the country.
It comes back to like, in these regions, because of the lack of available trades, you're seeing such variance in the cost to build right now. We were speaking with people up north in Nunavut, and they were saying, it's $1,100 a square foot to build. Like, what's going on? So what we're thinking about is, if we can take our system that is accessible to all these communities, and we have a model for manufacturing that is done in a micro form, essentially, you don't need huge infrastructure to build out. Can we support a significant amount of communities by standardizing the pricing of our structures, as well as standardize the process? So now it translates to significant savings for these communities.
I definitely don't expect you to like highlight, say, potential competitors in your space, but I'm curious, if I have someone listening to this show and they're living in like Halifax or something, and they're in love with this idea, and they're not thinking, maybe I want to do it in 5 years, I want to explore it now. Like, I don't know. I'm just wondering about people across Canada who are really inspired by what you're doing. What options might they have to like take this where they are?
Yeah, there are quite a few options out there. There are larger companies working on, multi-residential like Intelligent City, Assembly Corp. And then there are smaller sort of companies that are working on smaller structures.
Are folks able to connect with you about you providing, like, I'm just trying to think about your growth model, where you see Rohe going over the next few years, sort of a thing, expanding.
I think that what we're looking at is like, as we start to determine some of these markets that need the significant amount of housing, we've been talking with a lot of rural communities. So it started with, of course, the Lower Mainland, but areas like Toronto, Calgary, Edmonton, they're all dealing with this housing crunch. So what we're looking to do in the next 5 years is start to expand and provide these micro manufacturing facilities in these other regions. So that's one way. I would say for people that are listening in, that are interested in this type of model, is to understand what prefabrication is, what modular construction is, because there's such a market for it right now, and it's not really well understood. So they can start by the research and then understand what we do. With Rohe Homes, what we focused on was a hybrid approach of modular construction. So it's not a panel or it's not a volume. It's a mix of the two. And that allows us to streamline the access as well as the level of completion for our products. But there are things on the market that can service people in these regions. I think people just need to be informed.
Yeah. I don't know where this sort of came up. I was doing some research on this, and one of the ideas that came out of it was this idea of sort of disaster relief too. And I know that's kind of out of left field, but I do think when you see entire communities being devastated by some sort of natural disaster, and people want to return to their communities, this is an interesting thing that if prepared, that you can get homes back into these communities once cleanup and stuff is done. I don't know. Is this something that you've given thought to?
Absolutely. Yeah. We've actually had to deal with this situation. Our project out in Vernon was actually a wildfire victim.
Oh, okay.
And so, it was the fires of 2019 in Kelowna. And their family house burnt down. It was a cottage property, and they wanted something on there quickly, affordably. And all the builders in the area were tied up with all the other rebuilds.
Of course.
So, the family didn't have anywhere to turn to, and so they turned to prefab. And, we worked with them, got them permits, were able to deploy the unit, and then work with local trades just to work on the finishing and the foundation of the unit. Wow. And so, that was definitely, we definitely see, applications like that where we're able to really help accelerate the rebuild of communities when disaster has, hit.
I'll just say, the municipality was also on board. That was another big part of it where speaking with them, they were actually able to accelerate the permitting time because they're like, hey, there's a desperate need for housing. They understand prefab. What's really surprising about prefab, which you might not know, is a lot of rural communities actually understand prefab sometimes more so than some of these larger communities.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the reason for that is because modular has existed in the past. So when we're talking with communities, 5, 6, sometimes 8 hours away, the building officials are understanding of it. They understand the compliance. They understand exactly what the value proposition is. It worked out very well in their favor, working with the community near Vernon.
That's a great story. I'm really glad we touched on that because I didn't know that. So I don't know if we've fully unpacked the sort of reality of building today in terms of timeline. And if we did, listeners, I apologize, but I just want to go over it. Typically, what are we seeing in terms of like a typical build? Just if you already know what you're doing and you know what you want to build, let's use Vancouver as a nice little example of like from start to finish. Generally speaking, what are we seeing as a timeline for non-row home customers?
For, let's say, like a carriage home, it can be 1 to 2 years.
At least, just for a carriage home.
Yeah, just for a carriage home.
Yeah.
Like, how are we gonna deal with the housing crisis when you can't even build that fast?
Yeah.
Or you're dealing with all the elements and the time.
Yeah. So clearly, there's an issue with just the sort of administrative side. Let's call it to building, working with the municipalities, and I'm hoping generally that there's new efficiencies that come, but we'll see, fingers crossed. Let's just make sure it's very clear, like what kind of time savings might someone have if they're working with prefab?
You're probably looking at about a 40% time savings.
Okay. And then months, give me, what do you think that looks like, just to make it super tangible?
If we're looking at a laneway, if we're saying it takes about 16 to 24 months to build a laneway, or 18 to 24 months, our system, a prefab system, can take anywhere between 6 to 12 months, depending on how quickly we can get the permitting in. The Squamish project, we started in, I believe, in about April, May is when the foundation started. And by August, we had the unit installed and ready for the owners to finish it.
Right.
So it really accelerates things. And even on the front end, when you look at the designs, now you don't have to go get an architect, do a full design, do that whole process of, engineering and whatever other energy requirements are required. You can just straight pick from a library of designs and you can start, going through that permitting process. So that in itself saves you about 3 months, 4 months.
Right. And this is, again, not the right language necessarily, but it's almost in some ways, in some jurisdictions, it's almost like your designs are sort of like, quote unquote, pre-approved. Like, know that they're appropriate for the types of properties and that some of those question marks aren't there anymore. Is that is that a fair statement?
What I'll say is, we approached the city first before we did design.
Okay.
And we're like, hey, city, what's going on? Like, tell us how we can make this better for you guys, right? So we spoke with the city of Vancouver, the city of Burnaby, the city of Surrey, and we got the inputs and tried to understand if they were going to look at pre-approvals, what would they need? So when we spoke to our designers, we mentioned a few things like, having 2 detached dwellings instead of a single building with 4 units in it, as an example. So we took that information in, we passed it to the designers, and now by introducing, again, standardization with our modular, we're almost also introducing standardization with this whole design process and integration with the municipality. So when we have, I guess say like law and order in terms of design and how we're fitting it in with the rest of the construction process, it allows for a lot more efficiencies and savings.
Can I ask, sort of like a candid as an innovator in such an important space? Like, we know it doesn't matter where you are, housing matters, and it's a problem, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's a challenge no matter where you are on the spectrum, unless you're like really got just a lot of money, and then you still probably have problems. Like, more money, more problems. But
different problems. Different.
But still, you're blazing trails in a sort of traditional sector. And I'm just wondering how you're navigating that part and what maybe some of the most challenging areas or barriers have been, how you've kind of dealt with them. Is there anything that is worth mentioning?
2 things. I think it's the misconception of modular and prefab.
Yeah.
Like we mentioned, it's actually a better build that you're getting than on-site construction. It's not the manufactured homes that we spoke about. And then the other thing, I think, is really the adoption from the industry. A lot of the industry doesn't want to jump on, take the risk. They don't want to be those early adopters to be able to, even, we spoke with builders last week, and some of the builders, even though we've been able to narrate them, the scope of work, what needs to be done, they still have this hesitation because it's different.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, the 2 biggest things that we are trying to tackle as being, trailblazers in this industry.
Yeah.
How do we get more people to jump on and see this vision of what we already see?
I also think that, like, with homeowners, people just need a space to call their home. They design the inside to make what they want, right? Like they take a structure and they turn it into a home. And so what does that mean? Like, it's not always going to be a fully custom build. It's not going to always be this grandeur space. It's usually something where it's practical, it's efficient, it provides them with the essential means. And so another, I guess, challenge is getting over the preconceptions of, again, prefab and what that means. Like, what does it actually translate to in terms of the building space itself and what you can do with it? So that was a couple of things that we've learned.
And I know we have to end this soon, but I'm wondering, I'm thinking about 2 different things. One, I'm thinking about folks who are like, maybe they would have not considered prefab before because they didn't understand it. So if they're listening today and they're like, that's actually kind of interesting, they go and see the video, they check out your website. Like, I think that probably for these earlier days, it's folks need to kind of get inside one and feel it. So do people have an opportunity, at least here in British Columbia, to see what it is you're building? Tell us about that.
Yeah, we do have one. We have a show home that was currently under construction right now, actually. Soon to be complete, I would say, in the next month or so.
Okay.
So I know December is a crazy month with Christmas and everything. So most likely in the new year, we're going to have tours of this model. It's not a big space. It's 530 square feet, but it demonstrates the viability and the livability of the space.
And where is that going to be located?
It's going to be located in South Surrey.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So I'll put like a reminder about that, and then probably, early 2026, I'll push this episode out again, and so people can be like listening to it in real time and come visit it. So that's really great. Yeah. The other thing I'm thinking about is, as you mentioned, like builders, and I guess I mean more like smaller scale developers. So the person who goes and buys 1 or 2 lots and subdivides it and builds, maybe 5 or 6 homes. Yeah. To me, it would seem like a really practical approach to be building with this type of construction if they feel like they can sell it, right? So it is more spec in that way. But, they deal with the subdivision of the land. They deal with all the sort of that technical administrative stuff, deal with all the utilities, et cetera.
Yeah.
then put these homes up way faster, don't have that X factor of like timeline and unexpected issues. And they could put a presentation home up pretty quick and have it like ready to go. So I don't know, let's banter on that for 2 minutes and then we'll move along. But I'm just curious, have you talked to builders or developers about this type of thing?
Yeah. I'll just say we've been speaking with a lot of different groups, whether it be realtors, homeowners, builders, developers. And one thing that has come up that really sticks in our mind is something called the cost of chaos, right? It's the costs associated with, unpredictable timelines, again, material shortages, labor shortages, weather conditions. So by having, again, a way in which we can help support these builders by implementing a solution that fits within their existing business model is how we want to help provide a solution for Canadians.
Yeah.
And I can add on to that. Most of these small scale developers, people who are taking lots and subdividing them, putting a couple homes, they're not the ones with huge construction crews. They're not the ones, who are top of the line for most of the builders. So they have to think differently and they have to think outside the box, I think, to be able to really see the profit and reduce, like Salik said, the risk. And so looking at prefabrication would be a very, beneficial, beneficial thing for them because now they can actually focus on doing more lots. They can focus less on having to manage on-site sort of labor and they can, close and sell and keep moving through it.
They could probably offer more expensive customization on the interiors if they like this part, like there's a different way that they could stand out. I think that's really interesting. So anyways, I mean, huge fit there because not every homeowner wants to be the builder.
No.
They just want to have the keys.
and the thing that with the bylaws is like the bylaws for BC, it's like the bones of the home are always going to be the same because everyone needs the same structure. Everyone needs the same insulation. The government is going to mandate that. But the government's not mandating the finishes. And that's why we are selling these sort of canvases, blank canvases to builders so they can actually paint, on the canvas once they get it. We're not the ones having to do all the finishes.
It's almost like the easel and the canvas are there, right? Like we're just giving that portion of it, but they're the ones that are the painters.
Yeah. I do, again, encourage people to check out what they can of your designs because I think it helps people see the variation. And I would imagine that as, as time goes by, there will be more and more in way of, I'm really talking about the sort of aesthetic of the, say, look of the home from the exterior, having, different choice. But I do think that the architects you've chosen to create some of these options with, it does give such a nice vision of like the different ways you can go with the homes that you're building.
Yeah, huge shout out to those teams. They invested their time, energy to make this happen. They believed in a future where there is a collaboration and an alignment with prefab. And there's people like going back to the point about industry perspective. There is a challenge sometimes getting people on board and understanding the value of what we're creating. So to have these firms be a part has been huge for us.
That's very cool and Canadian.
And Canadian,
yeah. I love that. That's great. As we close up, I'm wondering if there's anything we haven't touched on that you'd like to mention, or anything you're just really looking forward to and most excited about for the next year or two ahead.
I guess like one other preconception is, like the livability of the space. People think that with prefab or especially a foldable home, that it's temporary. It's something that won't last. But based on, where we've delivered, how we've delivered, we've had to deliver a unit, for example, 18 hours north in smack dab middle of BC. The thing is, these are built to last. They look and feel like a traditional home. It's just our delivery process that makes it quite unique. Yeah, just thinking about pulling back and looking at prefab as a whole, as the industry, there's a lot of solutions out there that will help benefit Canadians if they start to explore the viability of what modular can provide for the future.
I'm really excited for the next 5 years, honestly, because there's this right now. There's a push on Canadian built, Canadian owned, and what people aren't seeing is that we are having a huge influx and a huge growth in population. You know, young people are the future here. And what we're starting to see is a lot of Canadians, their biggest asset right now is their single family lots, a lot of families. And so how can we take those single family lots and how can we maximize them? And, you know, really give the power back to the homeowners to be able to develop, you know, rather than selling your lots to a big developer who's going to put up a high-rise residential. How can we empower homeowners and citizens to be able to grow the communities that they want to live in? And I think that's what I'm most excited for, because I'm starting to see more and more people are starting to participate in that development process where they weren't able to before because they didn't know the know-how, they didn't know the process, they didn't have standardized products. And so I think that's what's really exciting. We want to really see, you know, regular people coming and making a difference and really impacting our Canadian economy. And I think this is a huge push and a huge way of doing it. You know, we're seeing Van City right now. They just announced day before yesterday that they're going to be financing these multiplexes up to 80%. So things like this are really going to help push this next wave of housing for Canada.
The multiplex, I mean, that's a conversation all in of itself, but I do think it is so exciting. It's something I'm thinking a lot about myself. And to your point, I think it's easy to say, oh, these homeowners that own these assets, and so many of us in say like 40 and under feel like we'll never have that, right? But a lot of our parents have it. Not all, and I definitely appreciate that. Not all. But this is sort of that unlock to generational wealth and quality of life that otherwise was getting very difficult to do. Like as parents are living till they're 100, you know, like this is a way to create a stronger communities, better connection, and really improve just livability generally. So I think that's really, really exciting. And I'm excited to see it play out, as you mentioned, over the next few years. So Rohan, Salik, I really appreciate you being here to talk about what you're doing. I think it's very innovative. It's very exciting. And I love seeing the future being built right here, not only in Canada, but in British Columbia and in the Lower Mainland, where, you know, is my home. So thank you for being here and telling us about what you're doing. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to following your progress.
Yeah, thanks, Ashley, for having us.
Yeah,
it was
thanks
a lot of
for
fun.
having us.